what are some common misconceptions about the role of an audio engineer in the creative process, and how do you navigate those in your work?
Common misconceptions. I rarely have to navigate those in my work, and that's just because of typically the people that hire me know exactly what I do, and they're
Mm.
hiring me exactly for that. But that does definitely exist, and I know a lot of people run into it where the engineer, I think in most part, it would be a situation where the engineer is expected to do more than he should.
Mm-hmm.
And on one hand, if you want to stay valuable to people and you want them to call you again, being able to be flexible and wear many hats and do anything you're asked is important. But at the same time, in the typical what is a recording engineer, what is a mix engineer, there's things that are defined, and at least from a starting point, it should be recognized that a recording engineer shouldn't be producing your vocals unless you've talked to him about it and asked him if he's
Mm.
it's a skill he possesses and you recognize that he's good at it, he or she. And but like just to have an engineer all of a sudden producing the track and everything, it's up to that guy how far he wants to take it before he feels like he's getting taken advantage of. Some guys like
Right.
me, like if the artist wants me to sit behind the board, record, but then tell him when things could be better, I'm all for that, because I want the best record possible. So I'm not going to be resistant to it. But some people will feel like, man, I'm not getting paid for this extra stuff.
Mm.
In mixing, maybe there's one little one I could give an example of. It's like tuning the vocals, just being expected that that's part of mixing. It's really not.
Mm.
Like so many people will send the track back like, hey, you need to tune your vocals before you give it to me as a mixer. And other guys will be like, hey, that's my job. I have to make it sound good, and it's out of tune, so I'm gonna put it in tune. So it depends what attitude you have with it, but same right as a producer, you shouldn't expect him to be able to play every instrument. So if you want violins on your production, you shouldn't expect that he knows how to play violin. He might have
Mm.
to hire someone, and you as the artist might need to pay for that.
Right. Right.
So I think just misconceptions. I don't think there's too many, but I think one of the biggest ones that people run into is expecting engineers to also be the producer,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of times that happens with the people that get their beats off of YouTube or
Yeah.
BeatStars or one of those websites, and
They're
then
asked to basically like add and like try to
they
create.
take it into the studio,
Yeah.
and there's no producer, so the role of producer falls on the engineer,
Right.
and sometimes that's okay. I think it's just a conversation you have to have up front. Is like, are you okay with being my producer today?
Yeah.
Since there is no producer, and if he's not, you kind of got to respect that.
Yeah. And that basic because that I mean I'm sure for the paperwork that gets a little muddy.
It it
Like
can,
crediting and
but
because
as long as everybody's honest and upfront,
yeah, yeah,
the worst thing to do is to go forward with a session doing something that you know you're never going to get paid for.
yeah,
It's like if you produce a whole. I've seen engineers pull down samples from Splice and start creating a whole beat. And at the end of the session, there's a production, but there's no producer, and there's no producer on the split sheets. So the artist is getting 100%. But
damn,
that dude just made your track for you, and you gave him
damn,
his whatever per hour
right.
engineering fee.
No percentages, no
You know,
nothing.
so yeah, I mean, some people just have to define the lines, and then there won't be any misconceptions.
Yeah,
You know,
my thing is too is like one day I hope, man, because it's like also too it's like it almost feels like it comes down to like I guess that's business too, right? Having the conversation or whatever. I get that, but it seems a little like
it's weird because you're in a creative environment. You
yeah,
want the vibes to be good.
yeah,
You don't want to talk about business because people get weird. It's like,
mm-hmm,
hey man, I feel like you have me play that guitar part, but that guitar part became the hook, and that's the melody you're singing. So I basically co-wrote the hook with you.
right,
Can I get 10%? And sometimes when you jump into those conversations, it's like the cool vibe we just had in the
yeah, it's
studio
over,
has gone.
yeah,
And depending on that guy's vibe, the reciprocation is like, yeah, of course, man, you definitely deserve 10%. Or is he like, man, I'm the artist. It's all mine. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
so
yeah. You got to talk to these people, and
it can definitely ruin the vibes of a recording session. So some people never want to bring it up,
yeah,
and then they wait a week to where everybody's at home and they call like, "Hey, man, I wrote that hook," and then
it's a whole other thing.
it's a
No,
whole different thing,
yeah,
you know.
such a weird way to navigate that.
That's why managers exist,
Oh, okay, true. Yeah, that's right. The managers do get in there and fight.
right?
I
But
want to do some of that.
they allow you to remain the cool guy in the studio,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
with the
yeah.
good attitude,
The buffer. You're the buffer.
you
The
know?
manager's the buffer.
right? But the thing is, when can you have a manager? You can't always have a manager
True.
in those early days, you know.
Yeah, you're kind of fighting and clawing at that point.
That's why we call the music business the Wild West, because
Yeah,
you're just kind of on your own until you're not, you know.
yeah, yeah. And then I guess before I get to the next one, that was interesting. You said the tuning. So tuning vocals is not part of mixing. Or?
Well, it is and it isn't. It's like it depends on the person. Like I don't consider it part of mixing. As far as like if you give me a pop song and it's got 20, 30 vocals and all of them are untuned and they don't want
True.
autotune slapped on it. They want Melodyne, go in there
Note
for
by note,
6-8 hours and tune it perfectly, you know. That's not part of mixing. That should have been done with the production. The other flip side of that is even when it is easy with like autotune, some artists have very specific autotune settings that go with their taste.
Mm-hmm.
So if you leave it blank and ask me to do it, I might do what I think sounds good, but the artist might hate it because it's not their autotune settings.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of pro mixers, we just want all the tuning to be done and baked in.
Yeah, true.
So that it's been signed off on. The producer's happy, the artist's happy, the manager's happy. Now it comes to the mix, and it's not about the tuning, because half these people don't show up to the mix. We're working over email, so they're not over my shoulder being like, "Oh, put the retune speed a little higher," you know. So
Right.
they're gonna get the mix, and I want people to be blown away on mix one when they first receive it. I don't want them to be like, "Man, this auto tune setting is wrong," on the first mix, because now they're not happy. They're not listening to how good the track is banging. They're listening to the auto tune being wrong.
Right.
So I just kind of request that all tuning has been taken care of when I get it. Now, if I'm mixing a song and it has been taken care of, but there's one thing they missed that's just like a little out of tune, I'll grab that real quick and fix it, and I don't have any attitude about it.
Right.
But there's a reason. It's not that I don't want to do the work. It's that, number one, it takes me out of the mixing process, out of my mixing brain. It's tedious work, and it's like you want your mix done, and like the same day I tell you it's going to be done. You don't, if I have to spend another 6 hours melodyning your vocals, and I've taken myself out of the spirit of the mix, and I don't get it done that day because you left all this extra work for me.
Yeah, it's not. It's just a couple different things that kind of like take you out of the mix.
Yeah. So
what
I would do is I would tell people, have your tuning done, and then some of them sometimes they'd be like, oh well, do you do tuning? And that's when I'd say like, yeah, like if you want to, I'll do it on a different day where it's not part of the mix, so I don't have to be in that mindset. And in fact, I might ask you to hire my assistant to do it, give him a couple $100 to do it, and that way I've helped him get another gig.
Yeah.
And then it's not part of the mix.
Yes. So you're kind of just in your vibe.
Yeah.
That's why I've seen that too with like Dave and like Nico and like how they, because that's kind of where when I kind of linked back up with Nico, he was with Dave, but yeah, I like that system that you guys do. It's pretty cool. Like you guys have the assistant. You guys kind of like just tell them, you show them whatever it is that you show them and like all the tricks and stuff, and then they kind of utilize it. So I do like that part of it where it's like we can have that done by this person who's on my team,
right?
And then the big dog comes in and takes care of it.
Yep.
Takes care of the rest.
Yep.
That's pretty sick.
Yeah, I mean, and it really is a question of how much. Like if an artist that I'm just like super excited to work with, and they left one untuned vocal, and it's gonna take me 10 minutes to do it, I'm not gonna throw up a fit and
something like of course.
I'm just gonna go ahead and do it.
Of course.
Be the team player,
right? Of course.
But if they send me a track and it's like, man, this is gonna be a whole day of Melodyne, autotune, and vocal line, and they have all these vocals. It's like 100 vocals for a K-pop song, and
Jeez.
none of them are in tune. It's like, dude, that's a day of work
Yeah.
that we didn't talk about paying me for.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna have a day of mixing.
Yeah.
So it's like at this point, it's like you got to sick the manager on them.
I got it. Got it. Okay. So there's a time and place for that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's pretty sick.